The book no one has ever read. Frascati, Italy, 1912. A Polish book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich is going through crates of old manuscripts in a villa outside Rome, sold off quietly by a Jesuit college short on money. Most of what he finds is unremarkable. Then he opens one book that is not. 240 pages, hand-lettered, left to right, in flowing, confident script, and not one letter of it matches any alphabet on earth. Page after page of plants that don't exist, star charts that answer to no known sky, small nude women wading through networks of green liquid in tangled pipes. Voynich spends the rest of his life trying to find someone who can read it. Nobody ever has. This is beyond explanation. Case number 4, the Voynich manuscript. Today it lives at Yale in the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library, catalogued simply as MS-408. For a long time, nobody could even agree on when it was made. Historians guessed anywhere from the 1400s to a 19th century forgery. Then, in 2009, University of Arizona researchers took the question out of historians' hands and gave it to physics. They radiocarbon dated 4 samples of the vellum. All 4 came back consistent. Between 1404 and 1438, 95% confidence. Separate tests on the paint pigments found materials exactly consistent with that period. And multispectral imaging proved something else. This isn't a reused page. Nobody had written on this parchment before the manuscript was made. Whatever this book is, it is not a modern hoax dressed up as medieval. The parchment itself was alive in the early 1400s, and the script on it, the thing scholars now call Voynichese, doesn't match anything else. Not Latin, not Greek, not Hebrew, Arabic, or any of the constructed alphabets scholars know from that century. It has its own letter forms, entirely. Before we go further, remember one thing about Voynich the man. When he showed this book around, word got back to a different kind of reader than he expected. In 1917, US federal investigators, the Bureau of Investigation, the agency that would later become the FBI, opened a file on him. Not because of the manuscript's contents, because he'd bragged at a dinner party about possessing the cipher of the American War Department, and someone reported it as suspicious. They suspected he might be a German spy. Nothing came of it. Voynich was exactly what he appeared to be, a rare book dealer holding the strangest item he'd ever find. But it tells you something about how badly people wanted this book to mean something. Even the federal government briefly wondered if it was a weapon. So what is actually in this book? Scholars divide it into sections by what's drawn, since nobody can read the words. The largest section, nearly half the manuscript, is herbal. Page after page, 1 plant per page, drawn with roots, stems, leaves, flowers, alongside blocks of that unreadable script. It looks, at a glance, exactly like the medicinal herb guides, the herbals, that were common across medieval Europe. Except the plants are wrong. Yale's own catalog lists 113 distinct, unidentified plant species in this section. Botanists have gone through it for a century, and only a handful of drawings can be matched with any confidence to real plants. A wild pansy, a maidenhair fern. The rest resemble nothing catalogued on this planet. One theory, published in 2014, argued some of the plants match species from colonial Mexico, that the manuscript might record a New World botanical garden. Most Voynich scholars have not accepted it. The timeline is awkward, and the linguistic argument built on top of it hasn't held up either. Next comes an astronomical section. Circular star charts, zodiac symbols, a bull, an archer, fish, recognizable as astrology, but tied to diagrams that match no star chart anyone has cross-referenced them to. Then the strangest section of all. dozens of small, nude women, submerged in green liquid, connected by elaborate systems of tubes and basins. Nobody agrees on what this depicts: anatomy, alchemy, bathing rituals. Nobody knows. Then cosmological medallions. Then a pharmaceutical section. Jars and roots and herbs again, but now paired with recognizable apothecary containers. Every section is illustrated with total confidence, like an artist who knew exactly what they were drawing, and every section is captioned in a language nobody on Earth can read. For over a century, the smartest people in the world have tried to read this book. Here's what's left standing. Suspect 1. Roger Bacon wrote it in a secret cipher. This was the first serious theory, published in 1928 by University of Pennsylvania professor William Romaine Newbold. His method? He claimed each visible character was built from microscopic strokes, invisible without magnification, that spelled out hidden Latin messages. It fell apart almost immediately. There's no physical evidence Bacon, or anyone in the 1200s, had the optical technology Newbold's method requires. Scholars now consider it one of the most thoroughly discredited theories in the manuscript's history. Suspect 2, and this is where the real professionals show up. In 1944, the US Army's own codebreakers formed a study group to take a crack at it. Then, in the 1950s, William Friedman, the man who broke Japan's purple cipher in World War II, arguably America's greatest cryptologist, got obsessed with it. In 1951, he brought in his old wartime friend, British cryptanalyst John Tiltman, a man GCHQ and the NSA both considered one of the finest codebreakers of the century. Tiltman did what Tiltman did best. He sat down with the raw text and ran a rigorous statistical analysis by hand, tracking which characters cluster together, which begin words, which end them. He found real, consistent internal structure, patterns you'd expect from an actual language, not random scribble. Neither Friedman nor Tiltman ever cracked it. Friedman worked the problem on and off until his death in 1969. Tiltman kept at it into the 1970s. Two of the best cryptologic minds the 20th century produced, and the book beat them both. You'll also hear that Alan Turing and the Bletchley Park team took a run at it. That claim shows up widely in later reporting, but unlike Friedman and Tiltman, there's no primary Bletchley file confirming it the same way. Take it as popular record, not proven fact. Suspect 3. It's a hoax. A worthless medieval forgery sold to a gullible buyer for a quick profit. This theory has real teeth. A 2004 paper by Gordon Rugg showed a plausible method for generating meaningless text with Voynich-like statistical properties using a simple grid and table technique available in the 1400s. Suspect 4. It's a genuine, unknown language encoded in a genuine cipher, meaning there's a real message and we simply haven't found the key. In 2013, physicist Marcello Montemuro and Damien Zanet ran an information theory analysis and found the text obeys Zipf's law, the statistical fingerprint where a language's most common word appears roughly twice as often as its second most common word, and so on. Real languages do this. Random noise doesn't. That result made headlines as proof the manuscript was real language. Then the same authors and later researchers Thorsten Timm and Andreas Schinner in 2016 showed you could reproduce very similar statistical patterns using a plausible medieval hoaxing method. A grill and table generation system, no real language required. So the same evidence that looked like proof of a real language also turned out to be reproducible by a fake one. That is the exact wall this manuscript keeps putting up. Every proof of meaning turns out to also be a proof that meaning isn't required. Suspect 5. The modern one. In 2017, TV writer Nicholas Gibbs claimed in the Times literary supplement that he'd cracked it, plagiarized abbreviated medieval Latin, mostly about women's health. It made global headlines for about a week. Medievalists tore it apart within days. Lisa Fagan Davis, director of the Medieval Academy of America, said plainly that his method doesn't result in Latin that makes sense, and that she was surprised the publication had run it at all. That same year, a University of Alberta team used natural language processing software and proposed the underlying language was Hebrew, encoded as alphabetically reordered anagrams. Their own translated first line: "She made recommendations to the priest, man of the house, and me and people." Even the researchers admitted it didn't read as a coherent, meaningful sentence in context. Medieval manuscript experts who reviewed the work were not convinced. Every theory that has ever made headlines has been walked back, disputed, or quietly abandoned by the people who study this book for a living. Here is the actual structural reason this book has outlasted every attempt to read it, and it's simpler than any conspiracy. To break a cipher, cryptographers need what's called a crib, a place where you already know or can guess what the plain text says. A name, a greeting, a Bible verse, something to anchor the code to a known language. The Voynich manuscript has never given anyone a crib. No known text has ever aligned with it. No bilingual passage, no repeated phrase we can tie to something external. Every serious cryptanalyst who has worked this book, Friedman, Tiltman, everyone since, has hit the same wall. There is nothing outside the text to check your answer against. And the statistics cut both ways, as we just saw. The text behaves like language. It can also be faked to behave like language. Nearly a century of published research hasn't resolved which is true. That's not a failure of any one codebreaker. Friedman didn't fail because he wasn't good enough. He's the man who broke purple. Tiltman didn't fail because he lacked rigour. Colleagues called him one of the greatest cryptanalytic minds of the century. They failed because the book may be built, deliberately or by accident of history, to resist exactly the tools cryptanalysis has. Here's what we can verify. A real book made of real 15th century vellum, radiocarbon dated with 95% confidence to the years 1404 through 1438. 240 pages of confident, fluent handwriting in a script that matches no known alphabet. Illustrations of plants that match no known species, drawn by someone who was clearly not guessing. And here's what no one can tell you: what it says, or whether it says anything at all. America's greatest 20th century cryptologist studied it for the better part of 2 decades and died without an answer. The world's leading medievalists have publicly dismantled every solution proposed since. The statistics that look like proof of a real language have also been reproduced by machines built to fake one. Wilfrid Voynich spent the rest of his life after 1912 trying to get someone, anyone, to read the book he'd found in that villa outside Rome. He never did. Neither has anyone since. Status of Case 004: unexplained. Some things refuse to be explained. We put AI on the case, and next week the case is a hijacker who parachuted into a storm with $200,000 and was never seen again. Case 005: D.B. Cooper. Subscribe. The files stay open.